No. Hello, ciao everyone. Thank you for being here. I know that has been like a tough day for almost all of you. So let's just start straight away. I have here with me today amazing experts, curators, artists, and international experts. And I'm going to call one by one. And then they will introduce them later after my introduction. So, Lit Rosenthal, Alexandra Payne, Fabienne Barati, Jennifer Battinger, and Victoria Bozes. All right. Please have a seat. Okay, so now just give you like a very short introduction of the panel, and then I'll ask each of you to introduce you briefly. We are actually, let's say, in a new anthropological moment more than like a technological one. So also the giant tech will excuse me. Where we needed to create new languages and experiences. And this is because all XR technologies and also the intersections with emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and also, of course, the Web3 and then the metaverse are really creating the need of inventing new languages and experiences and like the need of new skills that we call the ArTech of the future. And actually, we are seeing like that target audiences, mainly like young generations, like Gen Z and particularly Gen Alpha, because this is like the real digital generation, are not video first anymore, which means that they're not watching television, they're not on the broadcasters anymore, and they need and they like work and engage and socialize and buy on social platforms, immersive platforms, metaverse platforms, because this is like the way they like to be and to work. And then also we seen that the new audience participations that is actually very interactive, very immersive, is actually reshaping also like the new business models in the arts and cultural business, and creating new also location-based experiences that will needs to become more for like a mass level. So we're going to see like all of these things and discuss all these things with you today. And I'd like to introduce each of you briefly, who you are, what you do.
Hello, I'm Liz Rosenthal. I'm the curator of Venice Immersive, which is the immersive content section of the Venice International Festival. We are pretty unique because we're the only festival that has an official selection and competition of works. It's now the largest annual exhibition of immersive arts and entertainment in the world. And we also have an industry section where we select projects that are in advanced development to come from across the world and meet potential financiers and exhibitors and distributors. So it's both we also run a development program called the Biennale College. So we're looking at the whole ecosystem of immersive creative projects. I'm also an executive producer and I'm working on different projects that cross between art, entertainment, impact, and health and well-being. And I've set up many different accelerator and incubator programs.
Thank you, Liz. Alexandra.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little under the weather, so I'm holding in there, but I'm Alexandra Payne from Outernet London, and Outernet is a new home for music, arts, culture and entertainment right in the heart of central London around Tottenham Court Road. We're a free entertainment district, and we're on track to become the #1 visited attraction in the UK with 1.5 million visitors to the district on a monthly basis. At the heart of our entertainment is all about emerging technology. So all of the experiences, the art, the culture that I curate for those screens is all supported by interactivity, spatialized audio, augmented experiences. So we're really at sort of that intersection by bringing mass culture and mass audiences to immersive experiences. So yeah, it's really exciting, and you know, we hopefully will go from strength to strength. We're working with some of the largest brands around the world as well. So everybody from Meta and Netflix to, you know, luxury brands like Chanel and Loewe, and also encouraging them to become more embracive of emerging technology and start to bring more of their content to our screens in exciting and new ways. So that's me.
Thanks, Sandra. Fabienne.
Yeah, hello. So I'm Fabienne Baratti. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Immersive. We are 18 years old, a creative agency specialized in virtual reality, augmented reality. But we're focusing now on LB experiences under the brand Excurio. And so we released big LB experiences at the moment, Eternal Notre Dame, Horizon of Khufu, and Life Chronicles that are in different parts of the world. But I will tell more about them later.
Thank you for being here. We know that you have now an exhibition running. Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Bettinger, and first and foremost, I'm so excited to be here today with all of you and with such talented people on this stage today. I am part of Accenture's Responsible Metaverse team and have been a World Economic Forum Fellow since last year until July this year, and have been shaping their thought leadership around value creation and the social implications of the metaverse and its technology in the past year. And yeah, super excited for this conversation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Victoria.
Hi, guys. My name is Victoria Boussis, and I am an XR director, sitting one foot in creativity, the other in technology. My debut project, which premiered in Venice last year, Stay Alive, My Son, is probably my best known work. And coincidentally, to make this project, I ended up creating a company, a creative and technology studio, to make it happen. So we work across all entertainment and also across brands to create this idea of experiential economy that actually connects the dots, which I think currently remain fragmented. In addition to the creative component, we also create unique pipelines and patent the technology to enable that creativity to happen, to create that value for the company itself. So that is the short end of it. Back to you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm Elisabetta, CEO and founder of MIAT, a multiverse institute for arts and technology. We provide academic services. We have an academy to strengthen the talents in the future. So we have an immersive studio. We work for large global brands all over the world, and we have a research lab. So let's start. I'd like to start with you, Liz. You're an incredible, curator, also like an executive producer. So all these intersection of immersive and emerging technologies, so XR, artificial intelligence, and also for the Web3, is actually creating a new forms and genre. What are actually, the trends that you're witnessing in your role today all over the world?
Sure. I think it's really hard to generalize about what immersive creative content is, because we're talking about so many different formats and types of experiences. So at Venice, we try and show creative excellence across all of the different forms of immersive work. So that's from single player to multi-person experiences that could be designed for virtual spaces or in locations or hybrid experiences. They could be more artistic, experimental types of experiences, or they could be more entertainment experiences or performing arts experiences that include live performances. So we're talking about a lot of different things. And our program, if you look at it, for example, Victoria's project, she's going to talk about it, but is a single person narrative experience with interactivity,
yes, exactly.
And which has a really powerful story that's based on a book. And then we're showing projects that are multi-player or social VR experiences on platforms like VR Chat that are for 80 people, or live performance projects. So the kinds of things you want to talk about trends, I think are really important trends in terms of what we're seeing and over the last year, that I feel where we should focus on. First, it's social. I think a lot of the projects in Venice this year, they really showed that some of the makers that we're exhibiting, maybe we're around sort of 8 to 10 years into this form, they're now getting more experienced. So they're getting more experienced in knowing they have to look at some kind of impact or market. So they're a lot more market driven. So the really heavy projects that involved very complicated sets and actors and live performance that are very hard to carry, especially to festivals, and to make work, even to break even, we're seeing less of those. We didn't have one live performance project. But what we have started concentrating on over the last 3 years is we're huge fans of the platform VR chat, because we're seeing some of the most exciting creativity happening on that space. It's almost like the world builders who don't call themselves artists, who maybe call themselves hobbyists, are actually creating work so fast and iterating and learning about this new medium. So that's very exciting, and they are where their community is. So, for example, Finns, who's a champion world builder in the VR chat community, millions of people goes to his work. He's an incredible designer and lighter designer. With his Project Complex 7. That was his 30th world he's built over 5 years. And I think of most artists, it takes them, they're raising substantial budgets, it takes them maybe 3-4 years to make their experience. He is learning and iterating.
And he does everything by his own. That's the thing.
Exactly. And I'm just going to quickly point to other things I think are important. So obviously experiences like Fabian's, the multiplayer location-based, because people are thinking, what's going to work? It's so hard to exhibit work that's one by one person. So what Fabian's going to be talking about is really exciting, because he's got a business model that involves several people being in an experience that has an operator, that's a proper, robust, scalable format. And then we're seeing trends, obviously, everyone's talking about mixed reality, because that's what's happening with the headsets. We haven't seen that much work that I thought is really robust in terms of storytelling, but we had some interesting projects, for example, Felix and Paul, that most people know about, who are a champion studio from Quebec, had this new format that was actually with the Magic Leap 2, but it's something that can be ported across devices like the Quest 3 and the Apple Vision Pro, which is like a book with markers. It's called Jim Henson's Storyteller, where you turn the pages and the story comes to life. Very nice. Very beautifully done. And you can see that as a future kind of format with something that people understand as a form. And then, of course, there's, I know we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. There was a very interesting project, I think, that demonstrated where we're going, that caused a lot of buzz and also worry at Venice, but in the shadow of the actors and the writer's strike. It was called Tutpelmancer. And it was the first project I've seen where you go into, as a viewer, you go into a room, the first room, and you're asked these very intimate questions about your memories of the day, of your childhood, and your hopes for the future. And you're typing on this old East German computer, and you go straight away into the next space, and you put on a headset, and in real time, there's an experience that's been based on what you have.
I still have with me my story.
Yeah. And so, that created a lot of conversation. It was very interesting just to see, it's a kind of experiment. They're very thoughtful, the makers, and it was really interesting, just the, feedback from that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the key things that obviously I think people are talking about.
There are different genre and format that is actually coming up. And then, Alexandra, you actually have this incredible space in London, and now they know that you're actually developing, even and also moving forward to other countries. What does happen actually when these immersive technologies or emerging technologies, now they're also working with game engines, are actually putting in these incredible locations, and how do they change the audience experience and the engagement of your audience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think some of those public spaces can really be almost seen as non-spaces. Historically, they're not necessarily those, city centres are very much segregated into, you go here for shopping, you go here for entertainment, you go here for work, that kind of thing. I think what we're seeing with, interactive and immersive design is a transformation of those public spaces from being non-spaces into being experiential destinations. People are specifically coming to us to have an experience, and that's obviously very much being driven by the tech stack that's sitting behind the screens. I think when we were first ideating about the space, very conscious, the original formulation was to have a lot of advertising. and very conscious to try and steer away from that, because fundamentally people aren't just going to come and see big screens with ads. It's about culture, it's about programming, it's about arts, and obviously how technology plays an enormous part in that. And I think what we see with, we have interactivity cameras built into all of our screens. Our space is a 360, 26K screen space, and we have spatialized audio, we have interactivity cameras, we obviously do a lot of AR-based experiences connect to the screens as well. And how that's sort of changing that audience consumption of that content is really moving it from being a passive one to an active one. And that's definitely something we're trying to drive across all of our experiences, because once you make that flip, and I think that's, not just in a screen space like ours, but in any kind of experience, you drive deeper, longer engagement for the audience when they're on site there, because they're not just having that viewership, they're actually actively participating, and that creates longer lasting memories. I think the other thing with spaces like ArtNet, but as we're seeing them sort of pop up all over the world, is that communal, shareable experience. And even when we're talking about multiplayer gaming and things like that, or multiplayer experiences, it's about being able to share that and co-create memories with the other people in that space. We opened not long after COVID, and I think there was a little bit of a concern there about would audiences come back? Is that something that we wanted? And I think something unique. Well, not necessarily unique to London, but one thing we're definitely have seen is that we're seeing enormous amounts of droves of people come back to the city centres. Unlike some cities in North America, that isn't something we're suffering from, of people suddenly having these ghost cities. And I think that's really being driven by these experiential spaces, this arts and culture and programming, and people wanting to have that shared experience. And I think, whilst I'm a huge proponent of AR and how that can be worked into our experiences as well, it's really wonderful to see people sort of putting the phones down. We like to think that our experiences, are made for sharing, and that's obviously sharing on social media, but it's also sharing in that moment. And I think, that's really exciting to see that change of audience behaviour, that they're not going directly to their phones to have that content consumption. They're doing it through these large-scale immersive experiences.
And I like ArtNet really a lot. It's a very, very peculiar place. If you have never been in London, visiting ArtNet, really suggest you to go, because it's really like open, really open. So you have over 2,000 people every day. It's really incredible. And it's like this kind of open place, reminds me, in a way, in the location-based experiences, okay? It's not like a real location-based experience, but it's a kind of a way that you can see really like a new engagement changing a lot. And Fabienne, we also work with location-based experiences, mainly like immersive art exhibitions, but how actually LBE with all these technologies, combined together, are reshaping the, cultural sector, and also, we can see new business models, every day. And what are the main challenges today?
Sorry, what are the
main challenges?
The main changes, yeah. So, if we speak. If we speak about cultural spaces and cultural institutions first, the roles of museums, for example, is preservation and also giving access to culture, to knowledge. But they need to constantly adapt to an audience, to reach a new public. This is like in their DNA. And nowadays they also need to try to get new revenue as well, especially since the COVID. And so, of course, obviously, all those cultural spaces, the cultural institutions, they need to be aware, to be open to new ways of sharing knowledge. But this is what they can do. This is on us to adapt and to answer the needs. And so that's possible, I think, with the immersive experiences, with the technologies we are all developing. So I can give our own example with the immersive expeditions. So we created this format called the immersive expeditions, which are kind of 45-minute adventures in free roaming, multi-user virtual reality in very, very big spaces. big productions where we share a lot of knowledge through the storytelling. And what is also very important is that we partner with the cultural institutions to create the content, and we develop our own technology to be able to have a big flow of simultaneous visitors, and so a profitable model. And so the cultural institutions, they can either choose to host an immersive expedition to get new revenue and to attract a new public, or they can choose, to participate in the creation of the immersive expedition, to be a co-producer, and so they will get a share of the revenue for each ticket sold, but not only in their own walls, but also everywhere in the world where this content is distributed. And this is also for them a way to export their expertise and export their brand, which is also important for cultural institutions. So this is one way to do it, but there are like numbers of ways. We opened since last year 8 locations. Half of them are in museums, and there are more coming in museums. So we see really an increase in their ability to see how technologies can improve their life, basically.
Yeah, but in fact, one of like the main issues of LB is how to create a business model that really can become a scalable model, all over the world. And we see that every day, that there is like this intersection between XR, so virtual reality, mixed reality, and also artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, we know that we have waves in our sector. Okay, we have the wave of the metaverse, now we have the wave of the AI, but is really like highly adapted. It will be even more. My question to you, Jennifer, is, with this increase of artificial intelligence, actually, how we are like creating new spatial narratives, but particularly how is the behavioral is impacting, and mainly what is like the responsibility that we're giving in the hands of creators?
I'm so glad you're asking, Elisabetta, because that's one of my favorite topics. So I think art is something that has been so fundamental to human nature ever since, right? It's how we express ourselves, how we communicate with our peers, how we communicate with the future, maybe even with the past. So it's always been a big influence in how we shape behaviors, how we shape our opinions, and how we see reality. And I do feel like art now exists at this intersection between technology and media and content as well. And all of these areas are now fundamentally being changed by the introduction of generative AI. So if art is shaping our behavior and our view of the world, and now Gen AI is creating art, how does that change how we ourselves perceive the world around us? So in the preparation of this panel, I've been researching a little bit, and I found this really interesting and impressive study that was created. I found it in an interview with Ellen Winner, and she researches the psychology of arts. And basically what the research team did is they handed a paintbrush to monkeys and to children, and they told them, go and create art. And then they created this art, and they showed it to a group of people, and they put art of abstract expressionists next to it. And they asked the people, okay, so which art do you like more? And even people completely unschooled in arts would always tell the researchers, I like the work of the artists more. It seems more deliberate, it seems more planned, it seems more conceptual. So now we're heading into an era where technology can create that kind of art, and where we are all creators in a way that only true creators have been in the past. So this democratization of art, I think, is really important and really impressive at the moment. So when we're now looking at immersive experiences, obviously that's great, and that can be used for good, when everybody can create great experiences that can have behavioral impact, but that can also be used in another way and can be misused. We're seeing that right now already, especially in the context of misinformation and disinformation or deepfakes. So I want to kind of cite another researcher. His name is Jeremy Bailenson, and I think most of us in this room has maybe at least heard of him exactly. And I want to try to keep it short, but he basically said that in 15 years of VR research, they could always see that the behavioral output that VR generates in people is always bigger compared to control groups of other media, for example, written art or written media or films, for example. So obviously that can foster empathy, I think. I'm not sure if she's actually here, but Ylva Hansdotter has created this amazing experience where people can embody nature and then have like a really high awareness of climate change afterward that holds for a while. So it can be definitely used for the good and can positively impact our behaviors. But then there is a quote by Jeremy that I really liked, and he said that if I would now experience the movie Jaws in immersive experiences, I would probably never go into the ocean again in my entire life. So there comes the question about responsibility. To your last question, Elisabetta, I think we need to obviously put responsibility on creators so they don't create experiences that could create harm. So they are aware of AI bias or bias in AI systems and don't implement that into their art. But there's a much larger responsibility at the moment that is with academia to research behavioral impact, that is with the public sector to not only regulate but to create AI literacy so we can tell real from fake. And obviously, and that's the topic that we're driving at Accenture quite a lot, it's this whole topic about private sector responsibility and how do we make sure that technology in itself is built responsibility and it doesn't carry bias or it doesn't raise any other ethical concerns.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'm actually thinking also maybe we can talk about it in a few minutes. When we use artificial intelligence in immersive journalism or documentaries, also the impact of ethics on that is going to be dramatic, I have to say. Victoria, you're just working with, you're an incredible artist, an immersive artist, and you work with, you did something very peculiar with virtual reality. And I'd like to ask you, what all these immersive technologies are really reshaping, the interaction of the audience and how this immersive participation actually is reshaping the user experience.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to do something different. I mean, I come from cinema. So for me, I always heard the backlash from Hollywood saying, we're not going to invest in VR because we can't make $1 billion. So until we can make $1 billion, we're not going to buy into the system. So I said, okay, that's just going to happen as headsets, permeate the system. But that's always governed by how good your content is, right? Content is king. So I sat back and I did a study, and we pulled about 40,000 data points to find out what were the blockbuster films of Hollywood. And more often than not, and I want to say it's about 90% of those blockbuster films were actually films about the hero's journey. Mm. And why is that? When we watch these movies, we envision ourselves becoming these heroes, right? We want to become those people. We want to be inspired. We can do it. We can do that. So when I thought about the project that I was going to do first, I said, well, I want to make an embodiment experience where we follow an ordinary person that accomplishes an extraordinary challenge, lives a transformative journey, and so he emerges transformed at the end. And I wanted audiences to not only see it like a 360 video, but I wanted them to actually become this man, interact inside the world. So we built all the worlds inside the Unreal Game Engine, interact with the digital human of him first so that we can create this sense of connection of who is this 88-year-old man? Why are we being invited inside of his house? Because emotion connection is the key of all narrative design. And then we take people on that journey where they actually explore, they interact with elements, and each part of the critical piece of his book actually comes alive. So through this experience, as the character himself is transformed, you being him, you are actually being transformed. So the moment people take off the headset, they've asked me a million questions. Where is this book? Is this child alive? How can I find this Banado? Where is this man Pinyatai? All those things that films used to inspire us to do, because we're in that space, we could be really vulnerable with our feelings, we could interact, people started to do. So I think it will not be long until those kinds of films will start becoming the kind of content that people are asking about. They want to become the main character. They want to be the hero. They want to feel a sense of hope and a sense of promise that they too can become this person. So this is the kind of work that I do. These are the kind of narratives that I build. And the purpose is to create that moment that cinema did in that beautiful space called the movies.
And I'm with you.
Pardon me?
I'm with you.
Sure.
I'm with you with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Why not?
So actually, we are designing an environment and like a moment where we can see all these technologies really like combining together and creating new languages and immersive experiences, because also the new generation is really like changing, and they speak a completely different language. But not only, I have to say, because when you see the intersection also with the Web 3, we're not talking about only new generations, but I would say that from what you're saying, or from your like also examples, I can see that maybe the new KPIs in our immersive sector, and for immersive sector also like include Web 3 or engagement, a new social currency, access and shareability, utility, and if we talk about mainly Web3, also scarcity. And actually, this is actually generating, not only new languages and experiences, but of course, like new profiles that need to be, educated, but particularly an ecosystem that needs to be supported. And the ecosystem, and mainly like one of the main issues maybe in our sectors also is distribution. And so my question for you is, how can we foster our sector in terms of and making grow also in terms of production and also distribution? I mean, what are the real challenges in this moment?
Sure, there are huge challenges, because I think one of the big issues around the kind of work that we are talking about, so the non-gaming content, the non-obvious gaming, because I'm going to include, narrative games are part of creative immersive work, is that there's a distribution bottleneck, and it's a huge issue, because who is going to invest into something that's not going to reach audiences? So at Venice this year, we had a think tank, a closed think tank with people who are actively working in distribution, so licensing content or exhibiting content, whether that's in virtual platforms or in locations, and also people who are funding from soft funding bodies or thinking of funding. So first, I think when it comes to new mediums, we're very concentrated on the R&D, on the creative part. But no one really wants to think about how you're going to reach an audience. And I think that's absolutely critical. So in all my programs I've built, there was one program I built called Creative XR. It was very focused on, obviously, the creative development, but who the audience and how you're going to get to it and what your plan is, your impact, your business plan is going to be, which I don't often see, and I think it's a real issue. So producer skills are super important. Yeah. I come from the film business originally as well.
We're in great need.
And as a producer, and when I set up my first programs, I always made them producer-focused. A lot of the time, they're just creator-focused. And it's really about who is going to drive the IP, creative development of an IP that's going to scale or maybe be reformatted and going to meet people, going to be licensed. And that is a producer. It's someone with a company who's going to have to clear all the rights and think about what kind of format they're going to produce. So we have to think about forms and
distribution.
Yeah, and distribution. And it also, in terms of this medium, that unfortunately the storefronts are really not interested in creative content at the moment. I mean, when you look at Meta, they've it's games. It's mostly shooter games. It's non-narrative content,
Non-narrative content.
or it's Horizons. It's been Horizons. So that's, and that's going to be enterprise apps as well. People are looking at. So it's not been in this sphere, which I think is really missing a trick personally. Because I think there are huge audiences who, the point of immersive experience is something else. So going back to what's going to help the ecosystem, I think, helping the development of skills around producing is really important. That's something I've always built into my program. I think it's really missing. I don't meet people in our world who are those kind of producers. Yeah. They're very concentrated on the making of their work, but not in the whole format and the business side of it. And then it's the distribution side. And I think we're going to publish a report. I've just finished editing it. And it's interesting because we did a very big questionnaire to the people in the room before. We spent quite a lot of time on it, asking what the key issues were, what worked, what hadn't. And we bottled it down, because we only had 2 hours during Venice, to some key points that were sort of generally consensual. Well, there were quite a lot of things that were brought up by a few people, and discussed them as key recommendations. And a lot is to do, you talked about sharing information. There's no data or research in this area. So it's about networks. It's about, a lot of this work is made by public, is being supported in countries that have subsidy, have soft funding, or philanthropy and foundations. It's about people getting together. And it was great because it started the conversations between agencies that they have to start getting together to form networks and funds. And also between venues, like institutionally, a lot of the venues, there are loads of opportunities, like the performing arts sector is interesting because they understand about touring and how you create a format that's affordable. So there are loads of things that we can learn and data we can share that I think is really important. But it's,
even like when you conceive something at the very beginning, you have to,
think about the audience.
Think about the audience first, financial system and distribution, not at the end. There's going to be a problem.
Absolutely, because generally things don't go beyond the festival circuit if you
Exactly.
don't. And that's why it's very interesting looking at these kind of, forms like what you're doing is really exciting. Managing to get your, you were talking just when we were going on before, 70 people and to a location, you were saying 400 square meters. Thinking in those kind of terms for these kind of experiences is really important. What is the space you're filling? How many people do you have to move through? This is really important data. And working on large-scale projection that can bring... These are all really interesting models.
And the majority of the artists and creators are actually looking more to create something that can go to a festival, and then at the end nobody's going to watch it. Maybe if you don't distribute in a very strategic way, as you're talking about, and also your workshop in Venice was there. It was very strategic, really well designed, and very important in our sector.
Thank you.
Alexandra. Actually, I know that we don't have the magic ball, but what is your prediction for immersive and immersive arts? Do you think that places like ArTechs, that again I say now you're expanding, can become the new place for what I call being the artainment?
Well, I hope so. That would mean we stayed very popular. I think we've recently conducted some research on sites with a company called TCV to speak to some of the audience members there and start to understand, why they were coming there, how they found us. And, the 3 things that they sort of said was that it was all about distinctive experiences, gripping content, and that we were free. Of course, everyone loves free, but I think, in a cost of living crisis that the whole world is going through at the moment, having access to, incredible immersive experiences in which you don't need to pay for is obviously very enticing. But what I think it's also doing there is sort of democratizing that experience in a really public way. So, we're at an intersection where we're obviously seeing a lot of people come by that are either searching us out specifically, or they're on their daily commute, or where they're passing through from a transit perspective, or heading into Soho and on beyond that. And what we've sort of seen with ArTechs is where we're actually located historically has been kind of known as the dodgy end of Oxford Street. And, there was never really a reason to come down there. And the reason why I'm speaking about this is because through a space like ArTechs, and actually there's been a lot of, development that sprung up after us, is there's been a regeneration of that part of the city. And so what I'd like to see is that with more of these immersive experiences and spaces and public venues, ArTechs, his long-term ambition has been to be a global network of these sites. Eventually, we would like to see one of these in New York, in LA, in Berlin, in Vienna, and so that you're starting to transform these city centres into spaces that are driven by creativity and driven by technology, and so I'd like to start to see that being more prevalent in all of the city centres around the world and seeing how that kind of changes that. Do we start pedestrianising those areas? Are we seeing art and technology on every street corner? How do we start bringing augmented reality into our everyday lives when, we're experiencing our cities? So I think that's, where I definitely hope that this starts to go and that it becomes sort of more of an everyday part of our life, not necessarily something that we're seeking out, but that we're experiencing that arts and culture and technology everywhere.
Mm. And then now lots of the budgets are in Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah,
so I really
indeed.
expect you, to seeing you there. Fabienne, I just really want to go back to the LBE because I really think that you also created a business model which works very well. I mean, and how do you see the strategy working to create an LBE experience that can turn to be like an experience for the mass? I mean, for the large audience, because this is dramatically important in this moment in our sector.
Yes. So as Liz said, we were a lot of VR producers creating experiences that are not seen much. And exactly. Trying to get fundings, but I mean, it's not like something that can last, really. So we really thought about this, and so we created a format. So a format is, to be simple, is really a definition of what or some rules of what is a content and some rules of how to experience this content. And the objective of creating a format is to create, to distribute, to operate efficiently, yes, easily this content by duplicating it very fast, by managing large flows of visitors. And also, so this is all technical, but it also has to be appealing to the public. So it's a lot of different things, and it's both technical and creative. A format usually relies on a technology. I would say a framework, so a dedicated framework. So it's a piece of software, a platform. That is used to do all of what I said before, and also UX, a lot of work in UX. All of this takes a lot of time. It's a big investment, basically, big investment in time and money to manage to create this platform, to manage to make all those rules. And I would say this is what maybe lacked before, and maybe still a little bit for creators to be able to showcase their content. But it's changing at the moment.
And it's working very well.
Yeah. So now we are using our own platform, obviously,
yes.
And it's working very well. We have lots of people simultaneously managing big flows of visitors. A bit like in an exhibition, but it's easily duplicable, contrary to a standard exhibition. So that's the point. And we also can, in terms of content, we really can tell a story, be creative, build a context for those stories. So. Yeah, we try to manage creativity and technology here. So yeah, that's again one way to do it.
Thank you. It's your model, really. Your business model works very well. I think that is really like an example that in our sector, we need to consider. We're just arriving almost at the end. Jennifer, just really going back to the ethical issues behind AI. We just launched the first AI for writing masterclass in the world, and the first generative AI for visual storytelling in the world again. But really, please, just state a little bit of what is the psychological and also ethical, issues behind that when we talk about, creating with AI. Do we need to mitigate, or is there like a new paradigm that we have to consider?
So when we're talking about ethical implications, we can talk about ethical or moral rights or ethical principles, and I could talk about this for 2 hours now, which is I don't think that we want this. We're already short on time, so I'll try to keep it short. When we're talking about ethical or moral rights, we can talk about privacy, safety, security, transparency, fairness, sustainability. A lot of conversation right now is going on about accountability, so I won't be able to touch upon all of those right now, obviously. But one thing that I would like to highlight is like the whole topic around fairness and how fairness exists in the frame of immersive technology and then also AI-generated immersive content. And we look at this from different angles. Obviously, there is the entire conversation about bias systems, and I think that's being discussed quite a lot, but also how do we make technology, first of all, built by diverse groups, and how do we make sure that it's accessible, and it not only is accessible, but it can be accessed by a broad range of audience. And then access in that frame doesn't only mean connectivity, but it also means digital literacy, it means usability and affordability. So just like really quickly on that was quite important for me to mention today. But then I think one part that I do want to mention, and it's around this entire topic of IP and paradigm change, as was mentioned before, is in the frame of the ethical principle of transparency. So how do we make sure that creators can have ownership of their art? And we've seen in the past weeks, I think, that in terms of copywriting, it's not that easy anymore. So especially the US Copyright Office doesn't really acknowledge generative AI as a tool or as a co-creator. So in a lot of cases, pieces could not be copyrighted because of that. And I think, like to say it more or less with their wording, they say if the human solely provides a prompt and then the creative work is done by the AI, then the entire creative process is done by the AI. So I think that is really interesting in the frame of, isn't copywriting an IP originally been introduced to incentivize people to create? And if we're now not acknowledging these new technologies as tools to create, are we then not incentivizing people to make art anymore in the new era that we're entering? So I think there will be a lot of more conversation around that happening. And talking, you might be wondering, how does that link to everything I said before, talking about changing creator paradigms in that frame. I think the whole construct of how people create content and art might have to change in a way, and only the future will really tell us how that's going to look like.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's very delicate and sensitive to use AI, and we really need to do it with a very ethical, mind and perspective. And just going to the end, Victoria, we saw there is many challenges from a production perspective, distribution perspective, AI, and what is the main challenges that you see to produce immersive experiences and productions from your artistic perspective?
I think for making some high quality content, it's not going to be for a mobile device. Until the technology catches up with you, you're kind of stuck within that confine. I do think that's going to change. But how I think of content is very different. I think of a 360 version of content, which gives me some peace of mind. And by that I mean, once you build a digital world inside the game engine that is of such high caliber, we're talking AAA graphics, human realistic metahumans. What we've done lately for a fashion brand is we built an entire mythical world for them inside UE5. We are shooting a cinematic for them, which will be, 2D cinematic. Think of Love, Death, and Robots, right? We're taking that and we created a digital show inside Decentraland for the metaverse. It needed decimation and all that kind of stuff that you need to do technically. We're dropping it inside Fortnite to do an entire element of Fortnite. We're using it also for their marketing campaign, and then we're also selling digital twins. So the moment you see content in a very 360 way, then you start seeing the possibility of growth, right? Because then you're like, oh, wow, these characters are so compelling, so amazing. Well, why can't I do a spin-off and do an entire episode or entire series made inside the Unreal game engine? That is possible now. So there are limitations within the headset now, but I think you've got to release yourself from that and see it as a 360 approach to content. And the key is make amazing stories, make beautiful characters that stir us emotionally, and people will follow. The merchandise will become digital assets, and I think there's a bigger opportunity for that in the future.
Thank you so much. Now, can I ask you really 30 seconds, to each of you. This is like, we have like the timing here. Can you share your vision for the future of immersive arts? That's nice. 30 seconds.
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
This is always a difficult question.
I know.
And I was joking before. In 5 years, it's all going to be sorted, because that's what everyone says.
Yay!
I always think these things are really hard to predict.
No.
Because we are talking about so many different forms. But I think, what is exciting is we are going to be moving towards forms of art that are spatial. Yeah. And the kind of way that you're talking about thinking of worlds and environments that you're creating, as opposed to, I come from a film background as well, and people tend to think in a very linear way, even about immersive content. There are many opportunities of engaging and having touch points into them, and I think, this idea that you're not just stuck in one format, that you can create something and turn it into many different types of experiences with different types of value systems is kind of exciting. I know that's a very vague thing. My hope for it, I'm going to say my hope is, because I do worry that we're very bound into, software. Often software dictates the way things are created, and hardware is limiting things. And, for example, the storefronts are all completely censored. You can only show things that are family entertainment. Anything that's challenging is really difficult. And so my hope is that will open out, and there will be avenues of distribution and engagement that go beyond the kind of things I think we're mostly seeing, that I think a lot of the hardware manufacturers who have storefronts are veering towards the very generic and obvious. So I really think we need to chat, those kind of stories that challenge who we are and what the world is are super important. That's my hope.
Okay,
in terms
thank
of the
you.
media.
Alexandra.
Well, I'm glad you had to go first. I think, what do I hope? I think just, to what you were saying about the diversification of storytelling, I think also the diversification of audience participation in those stories as well, having, audiences from all around the world be able to interact, be able to participate, to be able to be a part of the narrative and help drive that is what I'm really hoping to sort of see. And then also, I guess, once you start opening up this world is also, and something I definitely try to encourage on our screens is, the diversification of the stories being told and who can tell them on these screens as well. Lowering those barriers for that to be able to happen, so that anyone can tell these stories. That's
all right. Thank you, Fabien.
Yeah. So what I'm excited about mainly is the interactivity that all those technologies provide, and so how new form of art can take this interactivity, this engagement between with the content, but also between the users in the content. I think that's something that separates immersive technologies with the other arts.
All right, thank you so much. Jennifer and then Victoria.
I'll try to keep it short. So I think throughout this day, and also throughout this panel, we've seen that there is this immense power in immersive technology and in the change it can create and foster. So for the future, I'm really hoping that we'll find a way, and that's a very utilitarian view, to leverage this power and create the greatest amount of happiness while trying to mitigate and really limit harm that it could potentially create.
All right. Thank you, Victoria.
My turn.
Yes.
I would say to continue seeing the leaps and bounds of how creative people are getting. I mean, I get blown away every single time I go to a festival because people have taken some medium called immersive and they've made it into something completely fantastical through animations, through haptics, through all these wild elements. And I think that that's really exciting. Second of all is I cannot wait to see a new distribution platform that is not walled, that we get to see our analytics, to see what people like, who is our audience, and allows you to add more elements on that front that speaks to this wider pool of content. That I'm allowed to put my 2D movie on there. I'm allowed to sell my digital asset for my hero item to raise funds because some kid wants to play with that in Roblox. I'm allowed to also distribute my film and reap the benefits of an equitable distribution model of that. So I think there is going to be a new distributor out there that will consolidate the film distribution model and what today is Meta and that to become equal for creators. So that should be
interesting. Thank you so much. There are like DAOs, like a decentralized autonomous organization, like, in focus on entertainment that are like being created. So, and they got like lots of investment. So who knows that this could be like what you're saying. For me, it would be like subjective, multi-platform, and volumetric, social and interactive. And let's see what will happen. Do you have any question before we say thank you and goodbye?
Don't be shy.
Exactly. Don't be shy. Raise your hand. Hola. Okay, one. I don't have a microphone for you, but you have to go. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I'm really fascinated by immersive experiences, and I got a question that popped up in my head when we were talking about VR movies. How do you guys see this dilemma of a director having a vision, a certain way that they want their art to be perceived, and also the freedom that these immersive worlds brings to how you are viewing and experiencing the content?
Well, I think like I never wanted to be a traditional director because I don't want to tell audiences what they're going to watch, how they're going to watch it. So for me, VR was very liberating because, yes, in my mind, I had this linear story because it was a true story, so it was linear. But I wanted to give audiences the opportunity to actually explore the world and make it their own. So I actually sat there and I watched each player like experience my experience, and each person had a very different outlook because I think for me it was really special because you maintained a dialogue with people. You were really closely connected to them. And if I did my job as a director, but also like in level design, right? Did I give you the right cues so you knew that you're supposed to turn here to kind of help you along the way because it is still very new? Then I think like there was a beautiful connection that we both shared that I think is very special to VR, especially interactive VR. So I'm happy to give up the control to connect more with you.
Yeah. Which is also like the audience concept, you know, the agency, concept. That is very important in our sector. Any other question? Come on. Okay, thank you.
Hi. I would like to get deeper in the distribution issue about this new narratives. What other things would you suggest? Not also giving more skills to the producers, but thinking about physical venues, the metaverse, or things that maybe we haven't done yet and we should focus in exploring new spaces to share these experiences, because right now you have to have technology and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the kind of experiences I'm talking about in Venice, which are maybe more narrative-based or around building environments that you explore, and they can be game-like as well. I think that it is really hard to be, you're bound by at the moment, on the storefronts, there's very little you can find. And so curation is a real issue, even within the storefronts, because the interface is really badly designed. One of the things, though, we think is I'm always careful when I use this word, lobbying, but I think there is some way of talking to some of the people within the storefronts, and we have done already in terms of us and other festivals, whether there's a possibility of creating a kind of curated brand that is a non-profit that helps put a kind of brand, a stamp of approval of creative content. We've talked to a number of the platforms already about this. There are some ideas in the online space, but the online space is quite tricky at the moment, where maybe it's a collection, an organisation that we came up with this idea, I don't know if I should really mention it, I'm going to anyway, called the Festivals Collection. It's something we've been talking about for a few years, where projects that have been put into official selection or competition of particular festivals is then, it's allowed to go into this collection and it's curated. Because we don't find a lot of this content at all on the headsets, even the things, for example, that Meta has financed in the VR for Good program, or some of their narrative content is really difficult to find. So there's an interface problem. But this is a curated brand idea. It's very difficult, though, to distribute work. It's very expensive and very difficult to set up your own platform or app. And there's loads of issues around in-app purchases. I mean, there's loads and loads of issues. But the location, in fact, what we started talking about, locations are really important. And this is a place where people are going to experience immersive content, because most people don't have headsets. It's very hard to find the content.
Absolutely.
So it's the idea about, we had a long discussion around what could be better in terms of locations. So about trying to do research on types of venues, about how you upskill people who run venues, whether they're cultural venues or private spaces. There's, for example, it's interesting looking at what's happening in China at the moment, where all over the world, where there are a lot of city spaces that are empty, that can be used to do some kind of run of some kind of show. And it's thinking very much, again, going into that business, thinking about the model. What is the model going to be? For something, for example, you do think about, first you've got technology you've got limitations of what you can work within a space. But how, if you do have to rent a space or run a space, how much is it going to cost you to operate that space, and what you need to design to go into that space? So there are loads of different questions. I'm hoping we're going to publish this report because it's got a lot of those suggestions, because I can't go into all of the details. But the location, the venue-based work is really important for the area we're talking about, because so many people are not going to experience things in headsets. They're not going to buy headsets. When they do, I know of my friends who ask me, I've got a headset, what shall I watch? It's really hard to keep them in a headset. I mean, the only way I go, for myself, I go into VR to go into VR chat and to do multi. So that's another thing, is thinking the social aspect and the new forms of, going back to the idea of what's vision. I think
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's really important.
I totally agree. I mean, I also work as a creative and executive producer for as I said, global brands, but also other kind of immersive production centers. I would really suggest to have a look. I mean, to look into a different kind of languages and experiences, also intersecting different kind of technologies, but. There is not only VR, of course. There's also augmented reality, but also look into the Web3, because it's really intersecting a lot, also with artificial intelligence. And location-based experience, I think, is a great option, even because you can create experiences combining again different kind of technologies, but thinking always. To how can you make that that how can you create and produce that experience that can become multi-platform? Because this is like a key.
I think also, Liz, are you also finding this too? Like, I also think a lot of distributors in the space, because they know that it's so tough for you to distribute, they give you these deals that are like unheard of. They won't give you a minimum guarantee. They take 10% off to do basically not a lot of things, because like what's happening right now, right? You have 4 people that you go to. Yeah. So there's all this kind of strangeness, and then you put your project on there and it's for free. So the whole, I think, industry itself has to realize and like honor the work and say, no, you want to buy this project, here's an MG for you. Let's split the profits after it makes its money, and I'll get the 5% to do, X, Y, and Z things for you. And then we split accordingly, because this way it starts elevating the content to be seen as good as a film, as good as a game.
Absolutely.
So I think that needs to get refined a bit more, so that we change the mentality of how people view this content.
I had a distributor who is actually getting pieces already created and produced that is going to distribute this for a 5K. Don't go into that. I mean,
yeah.
Say no.
I mean, it's very difficult for. I mean, there aren't many distributors.
There aren't many distributors. That's the thing too.
There's a games model where there are publishers, and it's a different model to the model we're talking about. There's, there's a handful of distributors across the world, or kind of one.
I was going to say,
I think we know about. And it's very difficult because there aren't many platforms who are going to license the work. So that's why I think if you have been creative in this reality and locations is going to be something.
Locations greater. If someone was,
sorry. No, sorry. And also work with partnerships like, Fabian is doing. This is really crucial.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I love the location based. And I think also I don't know if you know this, is there somebody that specializes in museums? That's a distributor that does museum pieces. These kind of specializations would be really cool, because there's a plug and play.
And it's, again, understanding your locations, because museums operate in completely different ways to cinemas. Museums plan 3-4 years in advance. And a lot of people I know think, I'm going to put it in a museum. It's like, have you talked to any museum? So it's like knowing what the venue is and what is needed for that venue. So, yes, there's a company, Lucid Realities. They specialise in her. You probably know them, Fabian, who do a bit of work in that area. But it's a really hard area, because you have to plan 3-4 years in advance if you're going to do something serious in a museum.
Yeah.
Or a big gallery, art gallery.
So we have 30 seconds, and I really would like to thank you all. Thanks, Liz, Alexandra, Fabienne, Jennifer, and Victoria, to being here with us, and thank you also to you all.